Hey, welcome to Janktown. Will here, and today we are doing a quick deck tech on one of the new legendaries coming out of the Lord of the Rings scene bundles, Gandalf of the Secret Fire. Now, Gandalf is a 4-mana value 3/4 avatar wizard with whenever we cast an instant or sorcery from our hand during an opponent's turn, we can then exile that card with 3 time counters on it instead of putting it into our graveyard. If the exiled card doesn't have Suspend, it then gains Suspend. I like this version of Gandalf, mainly because it has access to the most colors compared to his other versions in the original set. Now the first thing we gotta figure out is the role of our commander. Now Gandalf reads like an enabler. This means that we need to build a deck that can function well enough without him, but with him, it can pack that extra punch. That said, his abilities do point us towards a Spellslinger archetype, and I find that Spellslinger commanders generally accomplish one of 3 things. They either recycle something for extra value, they cheat on costs or something like this, or they trigger extra value on top of whatever spell we're playing. Gandalf falls under the recycle category in that he lets us play our spells twice instead of having just the usual one-time effect. Knowing this, we need to plug up our weaknesses by first making sure that we can at least play our spells. Because we want to cast from our hand, a form of ramp that's going to be very important to us is discounting. This lets us play multiple spells in one turn cycle just by the nature of them being like a static effect instead of something that we have to like activate, let's say like a mana rock or something like this. However, keep in mind that Gandalf's ability only triggers during our opponent's turns. So while instants are the top of mind, they're sometimes limited, and sorceries are the ones that usually provide the most value. So we shouldn't be afraid to pack a mix of instants or sorceries, but what is important is that we pack effects that can give our cards flash. This way we maintain flexibility as well as some versatility depending on what the situation calls for. Now the downside to focusing on value plays is that we don't win. We just spin in our wheels, and that can be fun, but at some point we are gonna get run over. The other aspect of Spellslinger that we should focus our deck on is the payoff package. Now there are popular cards that deal damage, but I personally like the package that creates tokens. Regardless, choose one that resonates with you and then just lean into that. Now before we get giddy thinking about all the broken possibilities we have with our commander, remember that the downside to this is that these are extremely telegraphed plays. So if you play something scary, the board will react. So we need to be ready to become arch enemy in like a snap. Whether or not that's justified, depends on our opponent's threat assessment capabilities. However, we can mitigate this with a bunch of cards coming out of Doctor Who, stuff with like time travel attached to them like Time Beetle, 10th Doctor. But even if you're not into that IP or you're not buying those precons, we can look into other cards like Clock Spinning, Rift Elemental, Dust of Moments, and Time Crafting. Lastly, something I thought would be fun to play around would be playing with cards with Cascade, Kicker, Buyback, Strive, or different modes. This is because after they come off Suspend, we can pay for additional costs like Buyback to put them back in our hands, or in the case of Cascade, we get the Cascade trigger since we're casting with it. Or in the case of modes, we can now choose different modes based on the game situation. And so that does it for this episode. I think Gandalf's a pretty fun and unique build around. He kind of sits perfectly in that he's not competitive, but he can also bring some heat, so he's just in that perfect power level, I think, for casual tables. If you enjoyed this, I hope you could leave a like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. I can't believe we're almost at about 800 subscribers. Pretty cool. Nonetheless, stay inspired, friends, and I'll see you next time.